Chapter 7 is on nonprofit organization strategic planning and strategic management. So we're going to review strategy for nonprofit organizations, which is focused on the long term and not the day-to-day. Strategy may be articulated in a written plan, an organized pattern of behavior. It may be more intangible and does not require any particular process. Strategy does require creativity and a different way of seeing reality. So those are definitions of strategy. Focused on the long term, may be in a written plan and organized pattern of behavior, may be more intangible and does not require any particular process, does require creativity and a different way of seeing reality. Now there's 3 approaches to formulating strategy for an organization that are discussed in the study by Kevin Kearns in 2000. One is a visioning approach, which begins with the leader's vision and works backward to determine strategies, tactics, and actions and resources. Another approach to strategy is an incremental approach, which is one decision at a time. And the third is an analytical approach, logic and in-depth analysis to improve the strategic fit between the organization and its environment. Strategic planning and strategic management. So this is the slide that talks about the differentiation between planning and management. Strategic planning is a systematic process that produces an agreed-upon product, which is the plan, and includes actions to change the entire organization's future. It achieves clarity about the organization's mission and sets priorities, and that's by Branson in 2004. Strategic planning builds consensus about the organization's priorities through planning process, Allison and Kay 2005. Strategic planning is not the same as long-range planning, which is projecting trends. It's not the business plan, which is for specific programs or ventures. It's not operational planning, which is implementing the plan. And it's not strategy, the plan itself. Strategic planning is different than those. Strategic management is an integrated approach to managing the organization based on the strategic plan, linking the strategy and the implementation. So this is a little bit confusing if you don't differentiate between planning and management. So planning is the process. That's something to keep in mind. Planning is the process. Strategic management is actually the implementation. So let's discuss the strategic planning process. This is preparing for planning and clarifying the organization's missions, values, and vision, assessing the current situation, identifying the strategic issues or strategic questions, developing goals, strategies, and objectives, writing and communicating the plan, developing operational and implementation plans, executing the plan, evaluating the results. So this is the process that nonprofit organizations will go through for strategic planning process. This is a graphic illustration of the basic strategic planning model that's included in your book, so you'll want to study and take a look at that flow chart that illustrates what we've been talking about in a graphic depiction. Next, we're going to talk about planning to plan. This is where there's time spent up front to build agreement about key aspects of the strategic planning process. So the nonprofit organization, management, and board of directors would want to plan to plan. This is where the purpose, the steps in the process, the form and the timing of reports, the role, functions, and membership oversight group, the role, functions, and membership of the strategic planning team, the availability and commitment of resources, and any important limitations or boundaries are all discussed and determined in the plan to plan phase. Next, define mission, values, and vision. First, the mission. The mission is the foundation of the nonprofit organization. The mission is not a mandate. It's not required by charter or law. It is the psychological and emotional logic that drives the organization. The mission statement explains the reason the organization exists and therefore must be the starting point for any strategic planning. Too narrow of a mission may constrain the organization, and too broad may cause possible mission creep, where you get off the beaten track and go in different directions and are not necessarily focused on your primary reason for being. So the mission is the foundation. The values and the vision of the nonprofit organization. The vision statement is a description of an ideal future, which is different from the mission. So the vision statement is the description of the ideal future. The values of the organization are principles that the organization holds most important. There's a debate about when vision and values should be articulated in the strategic planning process, but the important thing here on this particular part of your textbook is to understand the differences between the mission, the values, and the vision. So the nonprofit organization needs to assess the current situation. And in this case, we're going to be talking about the SWOT analysis. And this is what you'll want to learn about what a SWOT analysis is if you haven't run across this in many of your other classes before. So this is where you're taking an internal survey of your strengths and weaknesses and an external survey of the opportunities and threats. And that's what SWOT stands for, the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is an organized way to review each of these things. So you assess the core competencies, which are the strongest abilities, the most effective strategies and actions, or the best resources. And there is a section in here on the stakeholder analysis where you identify the characteristics, the values, the perceptions, the expectations, and the concerns. So what's important here is for you to study this chart and to understand what SWOT analysis is and how it's applicable to a nonprofit organization. So you've got in here the strengths and weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, and it's an organized way to go about analyzing and assessing the situation. It's important to identify the strategic issues or the strategic questions for the organization. What are the strategic issues? These are the areas in which the organization needs to take action. There are 4 types of strategic issues identified in the study by Bryson in 2004. First, the issues that go to the heart of the organization's vision and goals, which involve some fundamental change. Issues that require no action at the present time, but that must be continuously monitored. Issues that are on the horizon that are likely to require some action in the future, and perhaps some action now. Issues that require immediate response and therefore cannot be handled in a routine way. So this is where the strategic issues or strategic questions are identified. Next, we're going to talk about developing the nonprofit goals, strategies, and objectives. The goals are broadly stated in general, the desired end results or the accomplishments. So goals are broadly stated, and they are the desired results or the accomplishments of the organization. The strategies, on the other hand, are how the organization in general plans to work toward achieving the stated goals. And this is the heart of that strategic planning process. We just talked about this in the SWOT analysis. The objectives are specific, quantifiable targets, or exactly what the organization will do step by step. Next is to write and communicate the strategic plan. Now this is a written plan. It records the decisions that have been reached, the goals, strategies, and the objectives the organization is going to pursue. It's best if 1 or 2 people do the actual writing for a cohesive document that flows. The draft is often used to stimulate wider discussion throughout the organization and its constituencies. The governing board should eventually take formal action to adopt the plan as the organization's policy. And the written strategic plan can vary in length, format. It can use year-to-year objectives. It can vary in ways that are specific to each individual organization. The written strategic plan is a tool for communication and also for consensus building. So it's critical to have this kind of documentation so that everyone knows what the plan is. So then, to develop the operational and implementation plans, this is following the written strategic plan. So the strategic and operational plans can combine into one document, or they can be created into separate documents. So this is talking strategy and then operations. So there is the written strategic plan and the operational plan, which can be one document. Each plan requires a separate process, however, and each plan usually requires different individuals to be involved. So there's strategy and there's operations. The operational plan is a plan for putting the strategic plan into action. This identifies specific tasks to be completed. It establishes a timeline for the completion. It assigns responsibility for each task. It identifies the resources that will be needed, and it defines the measurement or evaluation to determine the completion or the success. And it can include other operational details, but this will give you an overview and an understanding of the the differences of the strategic and the operational plans, and the fact that they can be combined into one overall plan. So we're going to talk about portfolio analysis now. And what is portfolio analysis? It's a technique that's used by business firms to determine if their various programs, products, and services are in line with strategies and goals. Portfolio analysis for nonprofit is similar. This is where the growth share matrix comes in. So this is what you'll want to read in your books on the individual techniques within the portfolio analysis. And this is based on the growth and the share in a particular market. So it's utilizing business techniques and overlaying them and implementing them in the nonprofit organizations. And then the part about Kearns, which talks about the strengths and the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, and Macmillan, where the focus is on competitive position, attractiveness, and alternative coverage. So these are different techniques that can be used by nonprofits in analyzing their portfolio to determine if their products, programs, and services are in line with the strategies and goals. So it's a technique that can be used by nonprofits. To further the discussion, here is within the book is the Macmillan scenario that includes the competitive position, the program attractiveness, the alternative coverage, and the suggested strategy. So read through this and understand how these kinds of techniques that have been used by business can also be adopted by nonprofit organizations. As in most of the chapters in the book, it ends with a discussion of the criticism of the subject matter. So in this case, we're going to be talking about the criticism of the strategic planning for nonprofit organizations. Critics say that the process for strategic planning for nonprofit organization is flawed, that it can lead to setting goals but not strategy, that it can be time-consuming, that it can distract from the current opportunities and the problems. It can be periodic and not in real time. It can be planning by wishful thinking. It can lead to overconfidence in the predictions about the future. It may not be broad consensus and only reflect the consensus of the CEO and senior executives. And these can all be true. But in my opinion, it's much better to do strategic planning and have a focus on where you're going to go than to have no plan at all. So there are possibilities of being flaws in the process. There's no doubt about that. So even though criticisms may be valid, strategic planning is a great tool. And it's a tool for nonprofit organizations to use to determine where the organization currently is and to define the new place where it wants to go. And it puts together the plan to get there that considers the mission, the values, and the environment to change the future. So look at strategic planning for a nonprofit organization as a tool to get to where you want to be. So in conclusion, strategic planning is not a substitute for vision or leadership. Vision or leadership are critical, but strategic planning, if properly executed, can be of benefit to nonprofit organizations. Strategic planning is a tool that helps with the professional management and professional leadership of nonprofit organizations and will become more and more critical in the future.